Friday episode of the Extra Yard here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and we borrow Alfredo Arteaga from the mothership from 3 yards per carry. I'm already digging into Alfredo's weekend. I know you got happy hour on deck, my friend, and of course we're a week away from the second round, which is when the Dolphins have their first pick in the draft. Second and third round are going to be next Friday night. So I know you're keeping busy. Alf, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great, and parsing QB1's words as if he was the Fed chairman. It's been a fun week.
Yeah, so the last couple days, every now and then when I have some free time, I'll watch a little bit of First Take. I'll see what Stephen A's yammering about, and anytime Tua Tagovailoa speaks, it becomes big news on ESPN. And I don't take that as a bad thing, because even though they sometimes say negative things about QB1, I just like the fact that they feel like a Dolphins player is relevant enough to devote that much time to. So I don't take it as a bad thing like some people do. But, Tua, speaking to the media on Wednesday, like he admitted when he was having his worst moments midseason, because remember, he was in the concussion protocol twice, especially after that Cincinnati game. That was a really, really serious scene, and he was hospitalized. Everything turned out to be okay, but that was a scary scene when he suffered that concussion. And Tua did admit that at a certain point, he considered retiring. He obviously reconsidered that, and he's all in, but he said, I considered it for a time, having sat down with my family, having sat down with my wife and having those conversations. He said, but really, it would be hard for me to walk away from this game with how old I am. I think maybe he meant how young I am with my son. He said, I always dreamed of playing as long as I could to where my son knew exactly what he was watching his dad do. And then he added this, and I think this is something, Alfredo, that people forget, okay? It's my health, it's my body, and I feel like this is what's best for me and my family. I love the game of football. If I didn't, I would have quit a long time ago. I think there's a lot to unpack there, but the last part of that, Alfredo, is something people do need to remember is putting your own health at risk. It is a personal choice, right? And so, the people that try to retire this dude left and right as if it's their well-being and if it's their life do need to remember Tua is aware of the risks. He also says he has been told by numerous doctors that despite the situations he suffered last year, they don't feel like he's at any increased risk of CTE or anything like that. So he's made the decision he feels is best for him, not for anybody else, but for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you listen to all his words, he actually everybody's parsing his words and trying to say things that he actually did not say. He actually did not consider retirement. He had the conversation about retirement.
Good point.
Where it seemed like he was actually telling his family, look, you guys want to talk about it? Fine. Here's my point of view. I'm not. Okay?
That makes a lot of sense.
Which is kind of where he was going, and which makes all the sense in the world when you're talking about a 24-year-old that just had a really good season, just got his fifth year option picked up, and is seeing that Jalen Hurts just got somewhere around $50 million APY. So you're thinking to yourself, no, I'm not retiring. I'm a season away from the big payday. Right. And maybe I'll think about it after I bank $250 million. But till then, no.
Which
is a cold way to look at it, but it's also the realistic way to look at it.
Yeah, and listen, I talked a little bit. I think it was Tuesday, the last time I did an episode here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and we talked about the Jalen Hurts deal. I know a lot of people would say, like, that doesn't really affect Tua's future right now, but it does, because anytime a quarterback signs a new deal, especially a guy who was in the same draft class with Tua, that helps to set that benchmark, right? Because agents and teams, they look at, okay, if we're going to sign our guy, what did the last guy get? Agents are going to look at that. So it does affect Tua. Now, listen, I know that maybe in the immediate future, it maybe affects Burrow a little bit more, who's probably next in line for a deal, because in Tua's case, he's still in a little bit more of a show me situation where he's got to get through this coming season, virtually injury free and not have more of the concussion issues. But I absolutely do think, because some people were like arguing in the YouTube comments, Alf, that like, oh, it really does not matter what Hurts signed. His situation completely different than Tua. It's really not, because when Tua is looking for a long-term extension as a quarterback who was in the same draft class as Jalen Hurts, that contract is absolutely going to be used as a benchmark.
Absolutely, and they're going to look at this as the floor, because I would venture to guess, and I know it's Cincinnati, and Cincinnati is notoriously thrifty. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've listened to some of the stories that have come out of there this offseason, but it's kind of funny. It plays right into all of the stereotypes of Mike Brown and the Cincinnati Bengals. But you gotta think that Joe Burrow is going to sit down and is going to say, okay, like, I want to be, first of all, the highest paid and the highest guarantee out of everybody, which means that, yeah, 50 a year APY, absolutely. But you're probably talking to something like 240 million guaranteed. So Burrow's going to say, I want at the very, 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 very top, which kind of makes what Kansas City did with Patrick Mahomes kind of smart, right? Like, they kind of hustled him. If you look 2 years down the road, Patrick Mahomes, it's entirely possible that Patrick Mahomes is going to be about the 6th or 7th highest paid quarterback.
Yeah.
So we could have a standoff in the near future. So if Burrow's going to be all the way up here and Hurts is somewhere around here, you better believe Tua's representatives, if he has another nice season this coming season and the team wins, they're going to say, we want to be somewhere in between. And then what if Herbert gets a giant contract and Tua has, for the second consecutive season, a better season than Justin Herbert? Then he's going to say, yeah, concussions be damned, I want more money than Justin Herbert. I'm better than Justin Herbert. Pay me like Justin Herbert. So, yeah, these matter. Like, all these contracts matter. And if you don't think that they matter, look at what happened with Deshaun Watson and watch what's happening with Lamar Jackson right now. Because that deal has kept Lamar Jackson as basically out on the street right now. Not even going to sign that franchise tag. He's actually thinking about sitting out the entire season. So,
does that, and you're totally right about that with the Deshaun Watson deal. I mean, does that deal seem a little nonsensical to you? Like, Cleveland caved way too much on that deal, because, like, I get what Watson used to be, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe he'll be that again someday, but you could clearly see rust last season, and not to mention all of the legal issues and the stigma that hangs over his head that wasn't there, a few years ago when he was putting up big numbers in Houston. Like, to give him that kind of money. And yeah, that is the number one explanation for why Lamar Jackson is going through the issue that he is right now. Like, that Deshaun Watson deal, it just seems, obviously we knew he was going to get paid heavily, but what he ended up getting in the guaranteed money, full guaranteed, it was astronomical, and it seemed nonsensical to me.
Absolutely. And, it's actually the catalyst for what's happening with Lamar Jackson. And it seems like the Browns were like a late entry into the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. And it almost feels as if Deshaun Watson conveyed to the Cleveland Browns, okay, you want in? It's going to take this. And the Browns actually said, no problem. Which is something you want to hear in a negotiation, right? But you would think there would have been a little bit more back and forth. Maybe he really put the screws to them and told them, look, it's imminent. If you remember at the time, it looked like he was going to be an Atlanta Falcon.
Yeah.
Remember? So maybe he told them, look, this thing is imminent with the Atlanta Falcons. If you could do this, this, and this, and that, then I'm yours. And evidently the Cleveland Browns went all out, gave all the draft compensation that was asked of them, and gave every single penny that was on the table. So they made it happen. In other words, so we shall see how it works going forward. It seems like the NFL is trying, and so far successfully, I would say, because Jalen Hurts had a pretty good card to play.
Yeah.
The NFL is trying to make believe as if that contract doesn't exist. And the only guy who's reminding them of it daily is Lamar Jackson.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
It's interesting to see how this will end up, especially with Lamar Jackson, because if there's somebody that deserves that money, because remember, this is not a ranking, okay? This is not a ranking of quarterbacks. It's just my contract is up, and I am the best of the guys whose contract is up, right? Because not even Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, they could exercise the 5th-year option and put it off another year. But Lamar Jackson is the best of the guys whose contract is up. He should be at number 1, right? And that's all he's asking for. But he's making sure that nobody forgets what Deshaun Watson got a year before.
And I'm glad you brought up the 5th-year option, and that's a reason why this Hurts deal got done before any of these other guys, because he wasn't a first-round pick. He doesn't have the 5th-year option. So
Right.
Philadelphia was in more of a time crunch than Cincinnati is in with Burrow, and the Chargers are in with Herbert, and the Dolphins are in with Tua, because they're
and they could have had a really, really sticky and ugly situation if they make him play on his 4th-year salary, and he makes it through the year, has another good year, and he's an unrestricted free agent now. You know, can you imagine the mess that would have caused? First of all, you would have had half the league thinking about getting in on it. And then you would have had the Eagles, you know, in between. Because look, that's a guy that if you slap him with that tag and you put out that 2 first-round picks gets you him, I'm pretty certain that on Jalen Hurts, maybe 5 or 6 teams put out an offer sheet and put those 2 first-round picks on the table. So that would have been a huge mess. The Eagles, they're very well run. Howie Roseman's one of the best GMs. They're very, very smart to just head this off. And if you look at it, it's kind of a good deal. It's a good deal. For if they're going to get that type of production going forward, it's a great deal, because it's one of those deals that's gonna age gracefully, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, because when you see the next 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks come up to new deals, in a few years, they're going to look at the Hurts deal and say, well, that's a bargain. I want to thank everybody who's watching us live here on 5 Reasons Sports YouTube. This is the Extra Yard. Alex Donno alongside Alfredo Arteaga, who's sitting in the Troy Stratford chair today. Troy's going to be back on Monday. And, of course, Alfredo has an open invite for any time he wants to come on, because 3 yards per carry is the parent show here for the Extra Yard, and they're nice enough to share their audio podcast feed as well, which is awesome. Want to say hello to Vaughn954. Yo, to you as well. Lewis Sung Sr. I'm a big fan of Junior and Senior. They're both doing great work out there. To Ender, let's go Dolphins. Thank you to Gus. Welcome aboard as well. And before we continue, because I want to talk about something Chris Greer said this week, I want to remind you guys that you've got the reminder with the hat that Alfredo is wearing. If I can point the right way. It's always like reversed here on StreamYard. He's got that Prize Picks hat on. We are proudly brought to you by Prize Picks. It is daily fantasy made easy, and you got our Panthers back in action tonight. Game 3 against Boston, trying to take that 2-1 series lead. Miami Heat in action tomorrow. They'll try to take a, unlikely as it may sound, 2-1 series lead against Milwaukee. And guys, you can make these selections on Prize Picks. It's probably the best app on the internet, and there's not much competition for that, because you get to make these selections and win money quickly. You get to deposit that money within minutes, and it's fully legal in Florida. This is not like some sort of a shady offshore operation. Anybody can take part in this. It's really easy to deposit, really easy to withdraw. In fact, when you go to prizepicks.com or the PrizePicks mobile app, make sure when you sign up, you use our promo code 5. That's FIVE. Don't forget to put that in, because then you miss out on these bonus funds. If you use our promo code 5, they're going to double your first deposit up to $100. And you make your selections, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. You just predict if they're going to go more or less over or under their stat projections, and you win real money. And don't they have like a gimmick for Fridays? Alf, what is it? Flex Friday today?
Flex Friday, yeah.
A gimmick.
So yeah, sometimes it's a $20, essentially a $20 free play on a flex play of 2 or more players. Today they have a boost where you get up to 30 times your play on a. But what I'm interested in is what's coming up this coming week. I'm certain, because they had last year, other draft props. And, you know, if you think you know what you're talking about, and usually when it comes to the draft, nobody really knows what they're talking about. But if you think you know what you're talking about, maybe you're an avid listener of our podcast, the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast. You know, maybe, you know, take some of our, some of the stuff that we've put out there the last few weeks and try to incorporate it.
For the OnlyFins subscribers as well, they get the edge too.
Yeah, try to, incorporate that into your thinking of who or what may go in the first round or second round or third round. I'm pretty certain they're going to have some pretty nice draft props. We've learned as of late, especially today, that CJ Stroud thing is the most.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's true. It can't be true. Right? No. Like, there's no way, right? Like, the guy really checks every box. I put out a checklist every single year, which is I basically took what Bill Parcells put out as his checklist for a franchise quarterback, and then I incorporated some things of my own. Like I did some research, and Pro Bowl quarterbacks tend to come out of certain places. Okay, Pennsylvania, California, Ohio, for whatever reason, Texas.
Wow.
Okay, so I incorporated some things like that, and success in high school, awards in high school, championships in high school, a championship in college, at least a conference title, conference awards, all of those things. The checklist that I created for all these quarterbacks for this year, CJ Stroud is the only guy that checks 10 for 10. And he's the only guy I can remember ever checking 10 for 10.
Now, I got to ask
by
you
the way,
to follow
those
up.
who asked, Tua scored 7 out of 10 when he came out.
But, okay. Well, and here's the other one I was wondering about. What about Anthony Richardson? Because that one still puzzles me. Like why he's projected so high despite I get the size and the measurables and stuff, but I mean, how many does he check off for you?
Well, his college production is going to really damage him as far as those checklists are concerned. But Anthony Richardson is a guy that you just look at and you say, if we're right, then everybody else was right, because he's not going to be, he's not going to be the quarterback for at least 31 teams, right? Mm-hmm. So 31 teams, if they're right that he's not good, 31 teams are going to say, yeah, we knew about this. But if you're wrong, it's the type of thing that can get a young GM fired.
Yeah.
And something tells me, how did Carolina go through the Cam Newton experience and just forget it so quickly? Because this is essentially Cam Newton 2.0, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't they take the chance here? In my opinion, somebody's either going to be really, really right about him or really, really wrong. I'm completely agnostic on Anthony Richardson. I'm not sure what he is.
Yeah.
I saw him play in college. And if you saw him play in college, did he get you that? Did he look to you like a top 5 pick?
No.
When he played at Florida?
No. He's a top 5 athlete, but somebody's got to mold him correctly, because there were some games where he couldn't complete a forward pass. Like it was really bad.
Yeah, and if you saw some of his workouts this past offseason, I guess not completing a forward pass is still in the cards.
No, I haven't seen any of those this off.
Yeah, some of those workouts were not the prettiest of workouts. Okay.
Geez. Well, I also want to remind you guys, we are brought to you by You Break Wheel Fix. I'm so glad to have them back here on the 5 Reasons Sports family. The complete automotive wheel solution, You Break Wheel Fix. Ever parked too close to a sidewalk or curb? I know I have. I'm not the best parallel parker. I try hard and I try it often, but I'm not great at it. You Break Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, curb rash. Are your wheels fading or peeling? You don't need to replace them, as You Break Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new, offering complete refinish options through powder coating, matching, and polishing. You Break Wheel Fix is the answer to all your wheel needs. As if you're just looking to give your ride a new look as well. Folks, you need to follow them on social, because You Break, they've got these awesome pictures of the way they've tricked out some wheels. You can get Miami Dolphins colors on your wheels, Miami Heat, Inter Miami if you like the pink and black, orange and green for your Miami Hurricanes. They do such a great job. They can help trick out your ride. I've got a new vehicle recently, so I've got to get it out to You Break. Maybe I'll get some orange and green wheels. I'm interested in that. They offer many car customizing options, as you know. They're located just south of Aventura. You can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbreakwheelfix.com. They're really active on all social platforms at You Break Wheel Fix. Definitely follow them on Instagram, because you see all the cool photos, and shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter to get an estimate in just minutes. You Break Wheel Fix. So, as I mentioned at the top, we're a week away from the second and third round of the NFL draft. Here's something Chris Greer said this week about teams actually reaching out, potentially about seeing if the Dolphins are interested in trading up, because the Dolphins are one of the teams that don't have a first-round pick. He said, quote, "We've had a couple of teams in the bottom half of the first round reach out about saying they would be interested in coming down possibly if their guys aren't there, and if we'd be interested in moving," he said. He gave those comments to the Palm Beach Post. We'll keep those options open, he said. But I think he said it was nothing too substantial. And I don't know, Alf, with the situation the Dolphins are in, and obviously all of this is hypothetical based on, for these teams that may have called him, it's all based on whether or not the guy they want is still there. So this is a fluid situation. But given where the Dolphins are right now, only having 4 draft picks in total, unless there's somebody there in that back half of the first round that you really, really, really covet, I would be very hesitant to even thinking about moving up, because you're talking about packaging multiple picks when you have so few to move up. And if you just play the numbers, if you end up with 2 picks in the draft instead of 4, that just hurts your odds in getting players who can help your football team the next few years.
Yeah, and I don't want to start reaching into the kitty for next year either, because next year they have a first, they have a second, they don't have a third or a fourth. They lost the third in the tampering investigation, and they traded the fourth for Bradley Chubb. Another way to look at it is this way: it was pretty evident early on last year around the trade deadline that Miami wasn't too keen on using that San Francisco pick. Like, they had correctly identified that San Francisco pick was going to be toward the end of the first round. Turns out it was number 29. Mm-hmm. So I guess they did a pretty good job handicapping right there. And we speculated on 3 yards per carry that they would be open to business to trading that 29th pick, because it was going to make so much sense to them, because they weren't going to draft somebody at 29 that was going to give them the impact that a player that they can get for that 29th pick can give them, right? So we ended up being right about that, because they traded for Bradley Chubb, and they ended up being right. Okay, they didn't value that pick. Now, of course, they didn't bank on Bruce Beal costing them the 23rd pick.
Yeah.
So, and that's going to be an interesting watch.
I feel like Tom Brady owes us a season just for costing us a draft pick.
Yeah, and that 23rd pick, I don't know. If you look at who could be available at 23, could those guys have helped the Miami Dolphins? Absolutely. So that's one way to watch the first round. But moving up, no, they essentially traded out already. So why would they move back in? And I'm not too keen on touching anything from next year. You have a lot of high-priced talent on this team. You're gonna have to supplement it with some cheaper labor pretty soon. And you're getting to the point where you're going to run out of money for good football players. Are they going to have the money to pay Zach Sealer in a year? I doubt it, right?
In a couple of years, you got to pay your quarterback.
Yeah. So, you have this is a good problem to have, though, right? Like, they've done a good job. You're going to have to pay Jalen Phillips in a couple of years. You're going to have to pay Javon Holland. God knows that Jalen Waddle's contract is going to be ridiculous.
Oh, that's a good point.
Okay, and then Tua's going to get a big deal. Christian Wilkins' deal is imminent. It's kind of elementary, right? Like, you're going to run out of money. You're going to need cheaper labor. I don't suggest you start reaching into those picks just to move up for one guy in this draft. So, yeah, I think that they'll stay put. If anything, they'll probably trade down if the board becomes favorable for them. I could see them saying, you know what? What's nicer than having 2 top 100 picks? How about 3? Let's trade 1 to try to get 2, and it just naturally, organically try to grow the number of picks we're going to have in the top 100. And those are guys that could probably contribute this season and could be good depth going forward.
Let me throw you this question from Indade. Would you draft a mid-tier tight end later or a mid-tier offensive lineman early? So what with like second and third round picks, what are you looking at there?
Well, if you want to tackle, you're going to have to use 51. And if you don't use 51 and you're using 84, you're fooling yourself and you're probably lying to the fan base. Okay? You want to tackle, you're going to have to use 51. Okay? You want a top-notch offensive lineman. You want an interior offensive lineman like Steve Avila or Schmidt, although I doubt that he'll make it there to 51. But Steve Avila, I think, will be there. Like, I think that's a guy that you pencil in at left guard right away. You could sell that to the fan base, and that's actually pretty good GM work. You're adding a starter that's going to play 1,000 snaps for you this coming year. You take a tight end, maybe he hits right away in camp, and this is a guy that's going to play 800 snaps for you in the regular season. It doesn't usually work that way, right? Tight end is usually a slower burn. More likely than not, Durham Smythe is going to be the guy that's going to get the most snaps. But sometimes you have a guy just drop to you at 51 and you just have to take him. And that's Darnell Washington. Maybe Sam Laporta is that guy. They did work out Sam Laporta, so I'm pretty sure that they have him on their radar. So it depends on what you think of that player. At 51, I want a guy that's going to play a lot of snaps. There's going to be some great football players that get to 51, like a Trenton Simpson of Clemson. He's a nice player, but he's more likely than not a Jerome Baker replacement. You're not getting rid of Jerome Baker this year. Cap prohibits it. He's probably gone next year. So what? You're gonna do that again? You already did that last year with Channing Tindall. I don't think it's a good idea to keep redshirting these guys that you draft high every single year. So I think 51 has to be made to count. I would look for a guy that plays snaps right away. So you're thinking a guard, a tackle, top flight tight end, maybe a running back. That's a possibility if one drops to them. But as far as a project, when you're talking about mid-tier tight end, you're talking about a guy that you're like a Tucker Kraft, where you're projecting forward what he can be for your team. Those are the guys that you could take at 84 and sell. At 84, you're like, this guy's upside is through the roof. We're going to see what he has in training camp, and who knows, he may play 600, 700 snaps this year. At 51, you got to almost guarantee that they're going to play 800 snaps this year. So, I completely disagree. I think if you want to fill the need, you got to go at 51. I know everybody says, you always go BPA. Nonsense.
Yeah, I think that's it's one of the most ridiculous cliches out
there. Chris
Yeah.
Kaufman had a great tweet the other day. He says that the Miami Dolphins and Chris Greer have built the Death Star, and their thermal exhaust portal is that right tackle position, right? Why wouldn't you plug that in, right? Like, you're rolling out to the AFC with the Death Star. I saw somebody wrote an article the other day. Is this the most talented defense in the history of the NFL? And I'm thinking to myself, holy crap! And now you have Vic Fangio coaching it.
Yeah.
Chris Greer really did build the Death Star. But there is that thermal exhaust portal, right? Why not plug that in, right?
Dude, that is
brilliant. If you have the opportunity, let's say you're lucky enough that Juan Jones drops to you at 51, it makes all the sense in the world. Go get the right tackle, and now you feel really good about your Death Star, right? You can roll that out there and say, you know what, we covered every base here. We're fine. The only thing that could hurt us is injury. That's it. Yeah. But other than that, our defense is set. Our secondary is stacked. Linebackers are great. Defensive line is great. Offensive line is loaded. We know the wide receivers are good, and the quarterback is good when he plays. So why not, right? So that BPA at 51, it's tempting if certain guys drop, but they're drafting for need because they have to. It just makes perfect sense. They're trying to win a Super Bowl.
Right. I'm with you, and I love to end my Friday on a good Star Wars analogy. So let's leave it at that. Huge shout out and thank you to Alfredo Arteaga. Make sure to follow at 3 yards per carry on Twitter. When's the next show going to drop at 3 yards per carry?
Probably Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be just our last show before the draft. We'll just lead into the draft, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be active on our Twitter accounts all week, and of course on OnlyFans, just $3 a month.
It's a better deal than OnlyFans, honestly, because they're not gonna milk you for all the pay-per-views for the feet pics and all that stuff. They don't bother with any of that. They just break.
We don't come back to you and say, look, but for $4 we'll give you this evaluation of this guard from TCU. You know what I mean? Like, we get this guy from TCU. If you send us another $1, we'll talk about him. No, we're not gonna do that. $3, you get it all. Okay, on OnlyFans.
I love it. And make sure you check out 3 yards per carry, and make sure you guys subscribe to 5 Reasons Sports on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button, that like button, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the 3 yards per carry podcast. And we'll talk to you again on Monday. Troy Stratford should be back. He took a little time off. He's going to be back with us on Monday on another episode of The Extra Yard on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. See ya.